become active participants and leaders in the Python open source community. Our mission is to promote, educate, and advance a diverse Python community throughout outreach, education, conferences, events, and social gatherings. So please don't hesitate to put your comments or question in the chat section. Mouafek will answer you. Now I will let Mouna introduce you to Mouafek and enjoy the workshop.
So welcome again, everyone. You are honored today to have Mouafek Ayadi between us. So he's a Pythoneer data scientist at ODDO BHF. Added to that, he's a Google Africa developer mentor and a Microsoft data scientist associate. And so throughout his professional career, he was an AI tech mentor for Tunisian startups and many organizations, and a prominent participant and also leader in international competitions in the USA, Spain, Qatar, and so on. So I'm sure that you learned from him a lot today. Enjoy the workshop, and as Amal said, so don't hesitate to leave your questions in the chat. And that's all. So this screen is yours, Mouafek.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this invitation and the great presentation. So tonight, the subject is going to be APIs in Python, and I hope you're going to have fun with us. Let's have a small talk about Python first. What is Python? Some people try to go online and follow courses on DataCamp, Coursera, edX, and many other platforms. I'm not sure about edX. And they try to learn Python. You actually cannot learn Python. It's just when you have a challenge, you use Python as a tool. So there is no one is like a big Python savvy, because with Python you can develop mobile applications, website, you can develop machine learning, you can use it for data science, you can use it for business intelligence, you can use it for data engineering. I have a full list. I should have put it aside so I can cheat and look at the list, but the list goes on and on and on and on. And all of those different fields can be achieved by Python. So there is no one individual that knows Python. In Python, you only know what you are doing. If you have a challenge, call it, for example, developing an e-commerce website, you know the Python aspects to develop the e-commerce website. If you have, for example, you want to do security, pen testing and auditing for security measures, you will know the libraries to do that in Python. So in general, there is no general knowledge about everything in Python. You only know your field. And my field is data science. So what I do is I graduated as a business intelligence engineer, and then I shift my focus toward machine learning. And after working a little bit as a machine learning engineer, I gained different skill sets. So it was a business intelligence, machine learning, and a lot of other aspects like designing pipelines and everything. So I usually use Python for those tasks. And that facilitates the fact to be a data scientist, because being a data scientist this is an interdisciplinary field when you need to know a lot about other fields, and then you can be a data scientist. So that's my background. And throughout this journey, my focus on Python was to develop intelligent solutions for different kind of challenges. So guys, I'm going to be biased while talking about Python toward data science and machine learning, but this will still be applicable if you are in like web development. And by the way, you can be a full stack web developer using Python, and you can do it for a mobile application, etc., etc. So tonight our subject is about APIs, and APIs is a very intriguing technical term. Why? Because like you can work with engineers and you can work with a lot of coding enthusiasts, and nobody really knows what is an API. And that's legitimate. Why? Because sometimes the distinction between an API, a library, a framework, a software is a little bit thin. So I will try to give you a little bit perspective. APIs is the abbreviation of Application Programming Interface. And this was my first struggle when I was trying to learn object-oriented programming. They told us with Java you can make interfaces. And throughout the semester when I was a student, I did not see any interface. I was like, why there is no graphical interface? For me, interface needs to be graphical. And for a couple of months, I don't want to say a couple of years, I was not aware that an interface can be one line of code. So all the time I thought interface is something graphical. And then like while coding in Java, I was like seeing really length lines of codes, and I was only just using one line to call all those long line of codes. So why we call it an interface? It's an interface for even bigger process of coding. So for example, you have one line of algorithms. You can harness the power of those one line of code just with one line. But you can say, okay, libraries can do the same. Yeah. Actually, libraries can do the same, frameworks can do the same, and softwares can do the same. So this is not really specific to APIs. There is an intersection between all of these things. So a library, let's call it, for example, Pandas. Pandas is a library to manipulate data frames. Data frames are special tables when you can manipulate the columns and the lines in a very special way, and there are a lot of applications about it. But Pandas is very, it's not only one line of code and you harness the strength of Pandas. No, it's a library. You have a lot of tools to solve different problems. But for an API, inside the API, you can find several libraries. And those several libraries, you're gonna, with them, develop your own source code. And then your source code itself is gonna be communicated to the other developers through one or very few lines of code. So API is about creating an interface. It's not always graphical. It can be graphical, but it's not always graphical. The interface can be communicated to other developers. So for example, tonight's API, we can give it to mobile developers, we can give it to website developers. And with only one line of code, they can do whatever they want. But inside the APIs, we use libraries. So all APIs are founded by libraries, but not the libraries founded by APIs. So we need to clear our head about these kind of definitions. Moreover, you can ask yourselves, what's the difference between an API and a framework? Because I'm talking about API and it sounds like a framework. Actually, a framework imposes some kind of structure in your code. For example, if we are talking about .NET, you use C#, and if you use .NET, you have a certain structure of your application that's imposed by the framework. The API does not impose anything. And you may, some APIs are very complex, they can do a lot of stuff. And you see the source code and you see the capabilities of the API, you think that's a software. No, a software can be developed by a framework that uses API, and inside those APIs you have libraries. So in terms of complexity, what do we have? Libraries, APIs, frameworks, SDK, which are the software development kits, and then softwares. Now, before the libraries, what do we have? We have plain code. For example, let's say two variables, A and B. A plus B equals C. I can develop a library that do that. So I do not every time like put A plus B equals C. I call it a sum library. The name of the library is summation, for example, and I only call the library to do A plus B equals C. And inside that library, I can have a lot of other things. And then with that library, I can build my own API. So I take the summation library. I take, for example, a library that can let me connect to the to various websites using, for example, URL-lib, using protocols, and I put them in one small, not usually small, but like you can put them together, and then you deliver one output through a graphical interface or one line of code, usually one line of code, to reach your goal, which will be a little bit complex than building a small library and very specific to one task. Libraries can like operate in anything. The summation library, you can put it in a financial context, you can put it in a small game, you can put it whatever you want. But the API, for example, tonight's API is scraping API. It's very specific to that kind of thing. And then we have the frameworks. The frameworks are built with several APIs, and they impose a structure. And after that, we have SDK, which are the software development kits. They harness all the power of the previous things we have done to build the software, which is the most complicated form of coding, because you need a lot of knowledge about this. I know you may think about IDE. IDE is the software that lets you manipulate the libraries, lets you manipulate the APIs, the frameworks to build your software. So after this little introduction, tonight I'm gonna talk about how to build an API for scraping the Tunisian stock market. I was developing this example for a couple of weeks now, not because it's that difficult, but because I work full-time and in the weekends I do some consultancy. So I always like to be present in events. They call me and they say yes, because if I start to look at my schedule, I will say no. But then once I said yes, I need to dedicate time to do that. So every time I try to incorporate the API scraping, so I can like fulfill the needs of the workshops and to work on my own API because I want to publish it on Python. So what about Python? Anyone who uses Python knows Python. Python is so cool. Even the name is so cool. It's actually cute. It's called Python. It's like you have a small dog. So Python has a lot. I think it has more than 155,000 things to download. Why I said things, not APIs, because not everybody call what they found on Python an API. It can be a library and it can be even a whole software. For artificial intelligence lovers, you can download the TensorFlow. I think I'm gonna verify, I'm not sure, but TensorFlow is very intriguing because it looks like an API, but it's actually more complicated than that. So I'm gonna type Python. TensorFlow. I usually use Google Colab, so
just for information, I'm not sharing your screen. I don't know if you would like to share.
Could you please share your screen?
You have something to share. I don't know. Yeah.
Screen to share.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. So TensorFlow Python. Yes. So TensorFlow is Google. Okay, how to call it? Is it a library? Is it an API? Is it a framework? Is it a software? So when it started, it was more like an API to do machine learning. And then they were like reference it as a framework when it becomes big. Now, believe me, it's so massive. And now they are talking about TensorFlow as a software. They have things that get updated by the day, and they have a lot of amazing technologies. Like you cannot even put your head around all of their releases and all the options they are putting, and all those accumulations now is manifesting as a software, and you can download it from PyPy. Why I'm talking about TensorFlow is because it's not an API, it's a whole software, and it's kind of heavy. It's like kind of have a couple hundreds of megabytes to download, and the APIs we usually use is a couple of megabytes, not hundreds of megabytes. So that makes a big difference. So this is my GitHub profile. I should change this with a cat. It's more cute to have a cat. And you can follow me by, I think you press on the star, I think. No, I don't think you press on the star. You should look at the repository, and if you see a project you like and you want to see me updating those projects, you just start the project, and you can do whatever you want. So for the sake of tonight's workshop, I was developing this API. It's not finished yet, but the coding is finished. So with one line of code, we're going to do magic. And by the way, I'm going to put my hands like that, and the code is going to work by itself. So what you're going to do, guys, if you are interested, you can fork the project. You cannot fork because you own this repository. I'm not a member of any organization. Yeah, it's my own repository. I cannot fork, but you guys can fork it, and you can make a start. So when you fork, you can change the source code, and when you start, you can like follow me when I update the project because it's not finished. What I mean by finish it, because I'm gonna publish it on PyPy, and I need more configurations to do that. So when I make changes like delete file, edit, or change, edit is the same thing as change, or upload something new, you're gonna be notified. And the notification is gonna be like this. No, it's not like that. It works like social media. This is my wall. I can see the people I'm following. Like this guy is called Firm AI. He applies artificial intelligence to finance. When he does something new, I can see it. And why I'm talking about this? Because in Python, please use the best practices. We're going to start by PyCharm. PyCharm is the recommended IDE for Python by Google, and it's very super useful. You can like do whatever you want to do, and you can immediately push it to GitHub. That's why I was talking a lot about GitHub. I know like most of you know it is like very simple stuff. And with this, any change I can push it to GitHub without going to the source code of like this.
Sorry for interrupting you. So
yeah,
we have here H. Volti, who's says something in the chat, but this one is just in French. I will introduce, will translate it to English because I know there are people from different countries here. So she's wondering that she believes that for APIs, the workflow would be run on a remote server, and so the end result will be displayed to the end user. So
yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah, and in this context, I think her comment is super interesting because I forgot to talk about that aspect. So APIs are known to you deal with the API when they are on a server. For example, we have REST APIs, we have SOAP APIs, we have the WSDL contracts, and this manipulates how to use them. You do not even need to be on your actual computer. And this is why I was focusing on PyPy, because once I put my API on PyPy, then anybody can install it or use it. This is the big difference. Now let's go back to GitHub, and with this you can have git bash in here, and you type a lot of lines of code to just push your code to GitHub. I'm emphasizing on PyCharm because in PyCharm is so easy. And before deep diving in this from scratch coding API, I want to go back to the comment, the previous comment. And I want to tell you guys, because we do not have a lot of time tonight, and it's going to take a lot of time to cover all the aspects of APIs. We're going to have a second workshop, if you like, about how to put them in use. So tonight, we're actually going to code something useful, not just a tutorial on, I don't know, geeks for geeks, for example, just a tutorial to learn, but it's an actual use case. We're going to build the source code ourselves and put it in the right format. So then we can use it as an API on a website. So what our API tonight is going to do is going to scrap the Tunisian stock market. So in Tunisia stock market, we have between 50 and 54 companies, because some companies got delisted, and we have sometimes new companies. So we need to update our list. And what we're going to do is we're going to develop a function, actually develop a whole API that can scrape the data of Tunisian stock market. I talked a lot about interfaces and one line of code. So what we're going to do now, we're going to execute the final result. And then we're going to go back. Once we finish explaining the whole source code and how the different classes communicate, in the next workshop, we will deploy it on a server. So this is why I was happy about the comment. The deployment on the server is going to be in the next workshop, and we need to cover some bases. Why? My idea is to develop a small Django website, and in that small Django website, I'm going to have the Django server on, and then we're going to use our API on the server with Django. It's going to be Django RESTful API. But we cannot do everything tonight, because coding the API and then talking a little bit about web development with Python and then talking about API integration in one night is overwhelming. So we're going to clear the floor, start step by step, and it's going to be cool. So when I see in workshops, sometimes people start from zero. Actually, we're going to start by the last step. You're going to see by yourself the result, and then we're going to explain the result. So here we go. I have double screens, so I'm going to try to put it in the screen that I'm sharing with you. It's going to be like this. So guys, this is my PyCharm project folder, and I recently shifted from Anaconda to PyCharm because PyCharm is much better, and I do not have a lot of projects. This is my package. My package for my API that I'm going to publish have these. We're going to explain them, but you need to focus on the data part. We're going to scrap the Tunisian stock market, so we need a folder to put our data in a structured way. So what I have noticed that the people that are not into data science, they develop their source code for just scraping. But the data scientists and the business intelligence engineers, they need to deal with the data. They need to clean the data. They need to put it in meaningful pipelines so they can use it and understand it. So for me, I integrated all the data processing into my source code so it can be clean. So in here, the folders that you are seeing, they're going to be created by themselves. And inside each folder, the data is going to be scrapped and put it in order. And every file is worth 3 months of data. So each time I run my API, that's going to be hosted on a server in the next workshop inside the website, is going to every time clear this folder because the data is going to be old. And we're going to download the new data, and all of this data is going to be put into one file. So the person is going to make analysis on the data, just use this final file. And in here, we remark that this file does not have the format of the other files. This is what business intelligence engineers do and data engineers do. They need to spot the differences so that they can build a coherent pipeline that does not crash and include all the variables, all the files, and put them into one file. And by the way, this is the stock data for Tunisia. Tunisia is the Tunisian Airlines. And we have another company, it's called Adwiya, and the API by itself is going to create a folder by itself and then populate it with scraped data by itself. So what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to put my hands like this so you can see it, and the API is going to do all the work by itself. The problem is when you download, when you do pip install a scraping API, it's usually missing the good structure, because for them, they need just scrape the data, and it's for us to figure out how to put it in a good use. Before that, I'm gonna tell you about a small thing. Our scraping can be put in use. We can scrape in many different ways. For me, I always prefer Selenium. So for Selenium, you need to download the software and extract the software. Like in here, you can see Chrome driver, and it's a driver to open Chrome by itself and do the processing that I want Chrome to do as a robot. So you need to just download this software and use it. Just put it in the folder with your source code. This is, ladies and gentlemen, the very famous line I was talking about. This is the library I have made. So this is called a library. So I have made a library. I have imported my own library. And then with one line of code, I'm going to scrape thousands and thousands of data in a couple of minutes. So to make it more easy for you to understand what is going on, I have put text messages. So every step during the development process is going to be documented in here. Every time the API executes something, is going to be put in here. So guys, watch out for the messages here and watch out for the folder, how it's going to be emptied and how it's going to download the data again. So the folder, I'm going to put it like this. Actually, it's going to, let's start by this one. This is the folder. This is the folder. And why I'm trying to optimize my screen for you is because we're going to open Chrome automatically. So here we go. Okay, it has started. My hands are in the air. Now watch out for the messages in the console. Watch out for the data. It was deleted by itself. And then we have, oh, damn. I forget to put this. Yeah, so this is the website from where I'm going to scrape the data by my robot. My hand's in the air. It has logged in by itself, and it's going to download them by the robot. Once again, watch out for the console output, watch out for the folder, and watch out for the Google Chrome downloading the files by itself. You can see in the menu in the footer of the browser, the files are being downloaded, and please focus on the date. The dates are gonna change. We have started by 2020, by January 2020, and now we have scraped all the year 2020 in 20 seconds. So in the console below, we have the instruction year to scrap is 21. So the robot by itself, it has moved to the year 2021, and it's scraping the year 2021 by automatically changing the date. And this is the stock values, the stock data of the Tunisian company Tunisair. Still not doing anything. The error page, it tells me that there is no new data. So I exit, so the robot exits the screen by itself and opens another one in my other screen. And this is my other screen. And now it has changed the company name. Now the company name is called Adwiya, like you see with my pink cursor, and it's gonna by itself with the speed of light change the date. Once again, I'm gonna put my hand in the air. Is Chris Angel in here? And watch out for the console. It says that the API is scraping the Adwiya of the year 2020. And the robot is so fast, like no human being can act that fast. Now, why I'm scraping the data from elbursa.com? Because elbursa.com does not have a policy that says no for robots to download the data automatically. So guys, if the website says you are not allowed to use a robot, that would be illegal, but elbursa.com does not say that. So we can download all the data by a robot. Oh, by the way, sorry, I was stuck in the folder. It's now the Adwiya folder. I should have changed the folder. And you can see the new one is Adwiya 6. And that's the final one. And then there is another file that's going to be added, which have 2 years worth of data for the company Adwiya. And here we go. We can see it Adwiya on the top. So this is the full function of the API. And ladies and gentlemen, we have done that with only one line of code. That's called an interface. So what do you think, guys? If you have questions, that would be the best time to ask them.
You have Marwa, she's saying, so she thought that we can change date using WebDriver of Selenium. Okay.
Yeah, that's like a very, very helpful comment. Yes, Marwa, I really loved your comment. Well, like I said, this is not the, how to say, the last version. It's been like a couple of days, and I'm still gonna try to improve this in other couple of days that will not be successful. Like once or twice a week, I'll try to make it better. But for now, the version on GitHub, this is the actual version I have put on GitHub, and I will try to make it better. And by the way I changed the dates is kind of silly, so please do not laugh at that. Any other questions before deep diving in the source code? Don't be shy.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have Mohammed asking, is there a way to make a pause between each break between each GET request so that you are not saying as a spammer?
Yeah, you just use the sleep function. Where is it? It's somewhere in here. So it's somewhere in here. We have from time import sleep, and like between, for example, two different stocks, we can put sleep like 30 seconds. So you can like see that the robot has finished, and after 30 seconds it's gonna start again. And that's kind of best practice, because for example, if you do it in a website that says no, they have algorithms to detect robots, and you definitely need to use sleep, otherwise they're gonna detect you. Did that answer your question? Because if not, you can clarify it and I can like respond.
So just other question from Mokhtar is, in this case, what type of API, so post or GET? Thanks. I think he's asking about the type of API that you are using.
So it's really simple. If you are getting something, it's most likely to be GET. If you are posting something, it's like mostly to be a post. Like for a form, how to do it in PHP and HTML. You put a form and then you need to send it to the database. So it puts your data inside the database. It's going to be a post. But for us, for Selenium is a little bit different, because in Selenium, you actually open the website and you just take the data. So the API, how to say it, behaves like a GET, but in a very, but not using the HTTP protocols. And why I'm not using the HTTP protocols? Because when you are working in a restricted environment, like the bank where I work, they supervise the HTTP requests. So you cannot send the HTTP request that is not secure. But you can make a robot that looks like a human being. It just open the web page and just copy paste. So what the robot's actually doing is log into the web page and copy the information, and it saves it for me. If you're gonna work with HTTP protocols, you're gonna run into some issues inside some organizations. So what I figure out the best is like to have a solution that most likely will work in most use cases, and it's actually secure for you, because scraping is not always legal. Scraping in most of the website is an illegal thing to do, so you need to watch out for that. But then once we deploy this API into a website, we're gonna deep dive into GET and POST and how to use them.
Yes, so I think you are done with the questions for now. Yes.
Okay, excellent. So guys, when you are building something, it needs to be structured according to the best practices of that language. So for us, it's the Python context. In Python, there's a lot of people that have come from different backgrounds, like Haskell, like Java, like C, C++, and every community in other language, when they found useful things in a new language, and by the way, Python is older than Java, so it's not a new language, but it's like became popular with, I think with machine learning, I think it became popular. Some people bring their best practices from other languages and they use in a new language, and they, how to say it, and they want for the creator of the programming language himself and his community to do things that they are used to do in other programming languages. And this is what happened with Guido Varese, which is the creator of Python. And he said, for many things, he said no. He said no for many things because those are the best practices and the comfort zone of other developers and other languages, and they are not native to the nature of Python. One of those things that I have run to is this function, the define main function. So the define main function in here, we find it in Java. We find a lot in Java. And this is like the Python community after that found it is the best way to structure your code and your project. So in my main function, what will I have? I will have the path where I'm gonna store my scraped data. So this is the path I'm gonna store in the scraped data. This is the library, because there is I spent 3 hours the other day because the format of the path to my folder cannot be formatted in a correct way. It reads it as a string. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna use the OS path norm path, and it worked. So in my mind, this is just a string, but it's not really just a string. So sometimes in programming languages, you need to know these kind of best practices. If you have a path, you need to format it as a path. That wasted a lot of time for me because I come from the C programming language background, and I was thinking, okay, I can do it with a string. And then I have a list of the companies I'm gonna scrape. So guys, what you are seeing in gray at the top is all the company names in the Tunisian stock exchange. So in here, I just put in here, if you want to choose any company, just copy paste it in here. And by the way, you can only use one company. You can scrape the data of one company, and you can like add the new other years into other. For Tunisia, for example, you can put the year 2019. So as a programmer, you are free to choose the stocks, and you are free to choose how many years you wanna download. And then this function is calling my library scrape files, and I'm gonna go to my library scrape files. And in here, we find a big function. What does this function do? So this function iterates through the whole stock lists, and it gives you messages about which stock to download, and it creates the path to that stock. So if I'm gonna use, for example, the stock is called SMG or Sukna or Somog or Telnet, the name in here is gonna change to Telnet, and then I'm gonna have the folder in here is called Telnet. So we can scrape the 52 companies data and put it in this folder automatically. So APIs are about automatization. If somebody is going to use your API, it's not for him like to figure out how the source code works. It's only for him to give what he wants. You want that stock, you put that stock. You want that year, you put that year. He does not need to change anything. And after that, if I have all existing data, I'm gonna delete it. And then I'm gonna call another function in another library of mine is called scrape function. So I will go to the other library. I know this is like the technicalities of the API, so it's like pure coding. So I'm assuming you guys now are a little bit, okay, it's not that fun. Yeah, I know always in the workshops when I start to explain the source code, it's not the fun part. But bear with me because it's not that long. So in here, what I did is I defined the class. So I used object-oriented programming into Python, and this is the nightmare of the Pythoneers. And this is the nightmare of the machine learning and data scientists. They skip the math, then they skip the C programming language, then they skip the oriented programming language, and they skip the logic, and then they deep dive into data science and machine learning. No, that's not how it works. If one day you're gonna like make your own algorithm, you need to structure it in object-oriented programming. Why? Because the source code can be complex. Writing base code in Python is not a good thing. Like, it's better to write it in C++, in Scala, in something that have fixed variables than write it in Python. But we can always have a meaningful source code by using classes and object-oriented programming. So in my object-oriented programming, I'm going to call it class. This is my actual robot, and this is how I define my actual robot. It's going to take the path where to store the data. It's going to take the name of the company, and it's going to take the year. And then I'm going to open Chrome automatically by this function. So my robot class has two functions. The first one, my robot class has two functions. So another one. Okay, good. My robot class has two functions. The first one is to open Google Chrome and to indicate where to download the data. And the second function, so this is the Google Chrome robot, and this is how I coded the Google Chrome robot. This is the stupid code of changing the year, just prototyping. So the lady that asked about, that actually said we can use Selenium to change the date. Yeah, this is what I'm gonna do. It's like, delete this stupid part of the code. And this is what Selenium does. Selenium looks for the ID of the element. Like we know in website programming, we have the DOM file structure. I'm gonna Google it. Document-oriented document object model. So most of the websites use the document object model. So we have elements IDs, and we can display them, we can click on them, and we can go to form. If we have a form, we can fill a form. If you need to type a date, you can type a date. And this is going to be automatic, taking advantage of the structure, the HTML structure of the websites. And by the way, Selenium is made for testing. It's not made for scraping. But like the Python community, me and other people on the web, we are so happy to use Selenium, not for testing. I never in my life used Selenium for testing. I always use it to scrape data. And this is a very good thing why I insisted on this API development, because first, I gain a lot of time preparing for the workshop and for myself, because I'm going to do it anyway. And second, because data scientists and business intelligence people, they struggle to gather data. They download the data. No, you can have your own ways to gather the data. For example, if they tell you that the economy is bad, you can use this API to scrape the Tunisian stock market and analyze it and know if they are lying or not. And actually, the companies listed on the Tunisian stock exchange, they're making a lot of money. So our country, we still have companies that outperform the expectations even during the Corona pandemic. So in here, I'm independent. I'm not always dependent on other parties. I'm not dependent of other APIs. I'm not dependent on other people posting data. I'm not dependent on anyone. This takes a lot of time, a lot of effort to do, but it creates independency. Now we go back to the code. In here, it iterates, it loops through the years, and then the result is going to be communicated. So this is my library. My library is called scrape function. I'm going to go back to my other library. So my library in here have one class, and inside that one class, I have two functions. Now I'm going to go back to my other library, and in my other library, I did not define a class. Why I did not define a class? Simply because I have one function. It's called get data. In get data, so I have called my other library, and inside the other library, I have called the class, and from that class, I have called the function. And in here, I'm making, so the code is a little bit long and it's kind of creepy. It's just because when you start to automate the automatization process of the code, so you do not use your mouse or your touchpad, you're gonna write code to do that for you. So you can focus on your data analysis. In here, it creates pipelines to ingest the data and structure the data. People who are interested in business intelligence and data engineering, they're going to be interested by this part. And finally, I'm going to finish downloading all the data I need, and it's going to be on my hard drive. And by the way, I can put it on GitHub. Like, it can be downloaded and put it on Google Drive or automatically on GitHub. There's going to be no problem. So these are the two libraries I have defined. And from those two libraries, guys and ladies, because I know when I say guys, they think only the males, but no. Guys is inclusive term. It's gender neutral. Actually, it's not. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have finished explaining the difference between a library that we have implemented and the API based on the libraries that we have implemented. And with just one line of code, everything is done. Now, I know this is too much information in very small time, so I will try to keep this workshop really quick. And in my experience, people want to stop themselves when it's long. Hopefully not. I just want to say I'm going to open one last parenthesis. It's about the code structure. So your code, if you're going to put it on Python, you're going to have a specific structure. So your main function needs to be called like this: _main _.py. And you need to have a configuration file. So in my configuration file, I put the URL of the website I'm going to use. And this is the famous initialization file of the Python. And in here, I just put the version of the API I have created. And this is the structure of a Python package. One last thing is the setup file, and you can generate it. By the way, the configuration file and the setup file can be generated automatically with PyCharm. You can see it in here, run setup, because I already created it. And there is another way, another place where to create the configuration file. And then in the main function, how to call it, you need to add if _name _ equals _main main function. If we do not type this and then run the application, it will not work, because you need to call the main application. So guys, by default, not by default, but when you use PyCharm, you have, when you create the project, it's going to ask you if you need a virtual environment. Yes, you definitely need a virtual environment. And you're going to have your whole project structure in here, and you can have other projects. and you can run them from here. And this is how you create a Python package. For software, for an API, for a library, it does not matter. So we need to follow these best practices. Use object-oriented programming with classes, especially with self, is very important. And it helps you create clean code. So this is my today updated code. It looks clean, but this one is a little bit old, so it's not clean. And under the above the functions, you need to add what the function is about. So there is packages you can download. Once you type this, it's gonna create randomly generate the name of the variables and everything. I think the option is in Sublime, because in Sublime it has worked. For PyCharm, I'm still trying to discover. And I have put it in here what this function can do, what cannot do. And these are the best practices, because if you want to create a real project, a real life project, everybody needs to understand it, including you. After like 2 or 3 years, you need to understand it. And then you just push it to GitHub. And then I'm going to go back to GitHub. So these are the final steps. Et voila, scrap Tunisian stock market. I have a license, which is an Apache license for my project. I have the main function. I have the README file that I need to update because it does not have a lot of details. I have my scrape files, which is the library I have created for the robot, and I have the other library that will structure my downloaded files and make them automated. Another best practice when coding using Python is the requirement file. And you can see it's like just the requirements, just download pandas and download Selenium, and that's it. But some projects have like 20 libraries, 40 libraries, and it depends. And last but not the least is the setup file. And this setup file is the one that makes you execute the pip install and everything. And by the way, in some companies, they will not let you use the pip install, so you need to manually download the project, like download zip, and then you extract it and use the setup file to install your libraries. And this is my proposition for first workshop about APIs. So next workshop, we're gonna use what we have created tonight in a server. It's gonna be a Django server. It's not a real Amazon server or a Google server. It's a local Django server to execute the API we have created, but we're gonna talk a little bit about how to create a website using Django. So thank you guys for staying with me for an hour. Please, if you have any questions, do not hesitate. I can like accept the criticism.
Thank you so much, Mouafek, for this great
My
workshop. Yes, hopefully you get a real understanding about the use of APIs. So personally, I've learned a lot from Mouafek today. If you still have a question, yes,
Okay.
Amal, go on.
You can continue, Mouna.
No, it's okay. That just to say that if you have questions, please leave them in the chat. Don't hesitate, and that's all.
Okay, then, thank you everyone to be here today to attend our workshop. Thank you, Mouafek, for such a great session. Please stay updated. Please stay updated for our upcoming meetups by joining our meetup group. Mouna will share the link in the chat. Our next workshop will be organized on July 31. We will be pleased to be hosting Marietta, who is a Python core developer, staff software engineering at Belaid, the Vancouver PyLadies co-organizers through She will give a workshop on building GitHub apps using Python and the Gadget Hub library also. And then we will have another workshop with our amazing Mouafek. It will be on September 2. So if you have any question, please, you can put it on the chat. Thank you again.
And lastly, so we'll share the recording video of this workshop later on our YouTube channel if you have missed the first meetup. So feel free to review it. So I've just shared the link in the chat. Thank you all for attending and have a nice night. Good night for Tunisia people. Yes. Bye. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Yeah.